Welcome to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, brought to you by Pilma. This podcast helps lead lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Here is your legal marketing expert and host, Ken Hardison.
Hi, this is Gracie Howells with Pilma. Let's hit pause for just a second on this episode because I have to tell you about this event that every forward-thinking PI firm should have on their calendar this January. It's the AI for PI Expo in Orlando, Florida, January 15th through 17th. This is the very first conference of its kind dedicated entirely to showing personal injury firms how to harness AI to save time, cut costs, and grow faster. You'll get hands-on demos, practical training, and access to the best AI solutions built for law firms. Reserve your spot now at pilma.org/AI for PI Expo via the link in the show notes.
Hello, everyone. This is Ken Hardison, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And today we have the privilege and the honor of having Seth Price of BluShark and of Price Benowitz. Welcome again, my friend.
Ken, great to see you.
Yeah. So people don't know Seth. I mean, he is definitely an entrepreneur. He's built one hell of a big law firm up in the Washington, D.C. area, Maryland. And he's also grew one of the biggest digital marketing companies for lawyers in the nation. And we have him speak at our event every year, and a wealth of knowledge. We thank you.
Ken, it's, Pilma's been a platform for me. I've learned so much. I would not have the firm I have today without the learnings within your group. I mean, for those of us out there looking for somebody who focuses just on the business of law, operations, marketing, management, is always a joy because you're among like-minded people who are sitting there not worried about how to write a brief, but how to make the phone ring and get the revenue up.
So, as we all know, the big deal right now is AI. Everybody, we just got through with our masterminds in Montreal, and that was the big deal. I mean, I kind of get a pulse of what's going on across the country just by having these masterminds. And what are you seeing as far as with digital marketing and AI? I mean, what's the deal out there?
Let's look at it. Let's cut the question in half. From the producing of work, AI, just like practicing law, is integrated. We're using it for link building. We're using it for content creation, not just ripping stuff off of ChatGPT and posting it. That's a no-no, but using it for ideas for content, using it for improving content. All of that, AI is a tool that, God willing, just like it is in your law firm, like everybody's evaluating the third-party AI companies versus doing it off of, Claude or ChatGPT, that, we're all struggling with that piece. And that's the delivering of the sausage. How do we make the sausage? The other side is, how are people selecting their lawyers? And I think the good news for those that have invested in Google, our thesis has been local search is what for most of your tribe moves the needle. If you're a PI lawyer in Ken's orbit, opening offices, creating a juggernaut website with authority, that intersection has been what is tried and true to get the best possible cost per case. If you just did SEO, you're not going to get the ROI. If you just did offices, you're not going to get the ROI. But that combination of regional offices with an authoritative website has carried the day. We've seen this sort of the chatter that Google for the first time dropped below 90% of search. Those of you that look at your analytics have noticed that your traffic has gone down. What I have seen across the board, again, this is to Ken's world of single event PI lawyers, that generally cases have not. And if you are well situated with an authoritative site and an office layout, that combination is getting the phone to ring as much or more than before. You may have lost a blog that had great traffic. I get it. It's frustrating because now it's an AI result. But at the end of the day, those AI results or the old rich snippets are interesting. It's ego and you want to be there, but it's not what's getting the monetize. I've been injured. Who is the lawyer I'm going to choose? So step one is short term, things are continuously working towards the strategy that's been out there. But we would be ignorant if we weren't looking at what's next. And we're getting more and more people coming to us and saying, I want to be in the AI results as I do. And like BluShark, for example, has an AI package now because it's a slightly different strategy than link building to hit the Google algorithm. The AI algorithm generally has a very finite mentions strategy where that if we're able to get people mentions strategically placed, instead of links, those mentions are being read by the AI algorithm, whether it be ChatGPT or whether it be Gemini or any of the others. And that the goal is that if you want to be found there, there's a strategy to be used. I like it. I want to be there. But I think and I don't want to besmirch it saying it's a shiny object because it is the future. So I want to be there. It's going to morph. And so I think the goal is continuously focusing and putting resources towards what's making you money, while at the same time putting a certain percentage of your marketing budget towards making sure you do show up in the AI results and making sure that as whoever the winner is, let's say Gemini is the winner, making sure we're there. If ChatGPT is the winner, making sure we're there, or both, but allocating some percentage of budget for that, but realizing that may or may not be monetizable traffic. It may be more sort of social proof and ego versus the person ready to buy who's going and looking at the combination of reviews with local search that likely is going to carry the day for at least some time to come.
But don't you want to go ahead and start getting ready for it? I mean,
absolutely. That's why I'm saying take a percentage of your budget towards that to be prepared and be there. I want people to be there, but know that it may not, it's like early social media. Everybody wanted to be there, but almost none of your clients made a dime with all the money and all the posting they're doing. At this point, those that figured it out have a chance at getting ROI from social, but there was a lot of money spent and a lot of wheels spun before that happened.
Yeah. It's like streaming versus broadcast. I mean, we got people that are doing it and it's not really a good ROI quite yet, but they're getting ready because it's like the first time ever in New York, more money was spent on streaming than broadcast TV, which is the first time that's ever happened. I think it was like 50.5% versus 49.5%, but it's still.
Right. So and if you go to your entire tribe, how many people could demonstrate a positive ROI? Understand it's very hard to attribute from where you can attribute. And it's just not, there's some guy, just like social, some guy is going to tell you he has a good ROI from traditional Facebook for a PI lawyer, but generally it's not been, it made the phones blow up, but it didn't get you the monetizable cases. And it's frustrating. Look, breaking news, Stephen Colbert off of, again, there's some politics behind it, but the fact that they're willing to give up their flagship #1 shows you broadcast TV is not what it used to be. I know plenty of PI lawyers are still doing well with it. I'm not telling somebody not to do it, but it's frustrating because the OTT is not, many more people have lost money in OTT than have made money in your world, similar to retargeting. How many people showed up at a PILMA for the last 15 years telling you retargeting, not just, Facebook retargeting, but retargeting for the hospital, like saying you're a geofence. I'm sorry. How many people came and said geofencing was the future? If you had invested in all of them for 15 years, you would have lost money. Now, there are a few guys that are doing pretty well. Geofencing a hospital with some third-party groups, great. But it's not the fundamental that's bringing in the tried and true cases per month. It's that cutting edge, almost gambling, hoping to get an advantage.
When you said mentioned, when I go being mentioned, where would you be mentioned on the web?
So basically, the web is scraping for places that say that you're authoritative. So Ken has a PILMA website, but if all these different websites are talking about Ken and PILMA, that it's not a link back to you, but it's being read. Google, ironically, for all these years, has pushed for linkless mentions. If my firm is mentioned in the New York Times, but not linked, Google wants that to rule the day. But historically, as my buddy Guy says, mad links still matter for the Google algorithm. They like it not to be. What we're seeing with AI is they're not relying on links, but they're scrolling the web to see how many people, who's saying that PILMA's the best place to learn about marketing and management in personal injury law, and that it's not a link factor, but where are the strategic places for lawyers if they're going through, whether it be AAJ or whether they're going through fine law. That's some of the frustration, that some of the cloggy old directories are now being scraped by AI, and it's figuring out where, and that's the thing that I'm really proud of BluShark being at the cutting edge of, is figuring out where are those places, because we know if we put mentions in certain places, we're going to get our clients AI results that make them very happy. It may not make them money, but they're very happy. I know that we want to be there, but I need to balance that out, because if you just went AI and said, I'm going to be number one on AI results, I don't think you're going to be really down on revenue. And it's that balance, making sure you're future proofing. And, maybe it's sort of like with people when they saw like all the cyber currencies, did you take everything out of the S&P 500 and put it in there? No, but you should have a few shekels in there, testing it, figuring out what's there. And those that timed it right did very well. But more people have lost money than made money so far in your extended world. Now the question is, I am confident that we are aware now of how to get mentions and get those results in AI. That said, I'm not seeing it convert to revenue at the moment.
I got something I want to ask you. This happened right before we got on air. I get a phone call, and it's this realtor, and she says, I saw that you were on my website, and I just wanted to let you know that if any way I can help you, just you can call me or text me.
All right. And let me ask you a question. How recently were you on the website?
I don't remember.
More than a day, though. More than 24 hours?
Yeah.
So this is what's going on. And we're seeing, this goes back to the OTT. When you see the OTT guys telling you there are services, this is a thing, and there's technology, we have access to it, where you can see people that are searching for different things that have been on websites. And it's powerful. You're seeing resellers in the OTT world, in the radio world. I have friends that will send postcards. They'll give you the data. The issue has been in the PI space, the amount of time before you cross-reference who it is, and then get this, and then have useful information to get out, has made it less useful. That many people are doing their search, finding the lawyer, and signing up. Real estate's a longer play, so it's kind of genius that somebody's doing that piece. It is out there, and we're seeing, that's where when you're seeing any results from OTT, it's that intersection where they're buying that data, but it's not particularly timely yet. It's getting there. And when you look at it, if the number of impressions they're selling me, the number of people they tell me are looking for a PI lawyer, all of North Carolina would be injured right now. It's nonsense, right? There's a lot of hamburger helper in there. But as that just demonstrated, there is the technology to get that information. But as a lawyer, most states are not going to allow you to pick up the phone and call somebody, right? You could put together a mailing program, you could do certain things, but it is there. The people that have been tying it to OTT, again, like the geofencing, have lost more than they've made, but it is cutting edge. It is out there. And, I have no doubt that will come. And like many things out there, do you want to be the guy who's sort of throwing money, hoping it, or you're going to wait for the proof of concept? And I think that's what the stage we're in, but it's spooky stuff. I talked to you about before we went on air about the Google glasses. The Meta glasses. I have the Meta glasses here, right? And they're awesome. Takes pictures, video, translates. And, we could talk about this in a moment. You can ask questions. So all of a sudden Meta is going to get its stuff. Are you really going to go for your PI lawyer through the Meta glasses? Maybe. Anecdotally, I don't think it's the main thing. But each of these pieces is sort of like getting you to think about what's next. And I think it's how do you allocate your resources between what's fundamental versus, like, I think you see this when you see this shiny object at these masterminds, having an R&D budget. I talk about this on the Law Firm Blueprint, the podcast you've been on a bunch. knowing that you want to have that money out there and experiment at the same time, you're not putting your life savings into it, because which of these is actually going to work? It's cool. And is this lady going to pick you up as a client because of it? Or are you going to be spooked out and say, I don't want to speak to her? Using to land the plane on this, I'm at this conference. I'm in Portugal. It's awesome. Somebody's talking to me about a restaurant CRM platform. That's not my space. The next day, after with these glasses on, the very next day, I start getting ads for that platform. It's spooky.
Yeah, we don't have any more privacy, I guess. It's over with.
If we're old enough to remember, we were afraid of the Russians spying on us.
Yeah.
Right. I have an Alexa, a Google Home, and a Meta glasses sitting within 20 feet of me at home. They know everything going on in my life. The wiretaps are now self-imposed.
Well, I've never got Alexa, man. I'm scared of that. I know I ought to, but
yeah, I'm sure your phone is recording you at all times as well for Surrey.
Probably. That's what
you just don't mind Zuckerberg listening to you. You just don't want Bezos.
Yeah. So earlier you were talking about the offices, and I guess is that the concept where you go out and do satellite offices and get a Google My Business page for that office, or is that something else?
Yeah, exactly. We have seen the best results. We talk about it and give the updates at PILMA Super Summit. To us, search is great, but that Google, which is still the dominant player for most of your people for the time being, that we are in a position where with local search, we are able to expand geography. We talked a number of years ago at the Super Summit about the proximity update, where Google was adding essentially near me to every search, whether or not you included it. Okay. To me, shouldn't matter where in town, but for most of the PILMA world, they weren't dominating Chicago. And this allows you to have your geography. And what I'm telling people is, if you want to compete with the big boys, that you're able to pick, they can't be everywhere. They get brand, and that's going to help them, but you can own geography on search. And the way to do that is to expand your footprint. This is, again, 3 rules. You don't want to mess with your local bar. You don't want somebody to walk into a tattoo parlor and think, what the hell is this? And you can't upset Google. But if you're able to find a legitimized office that Google will approve, you can do a tremendous amount beyond having a single mothership office. And we love that opportunity, and that it still works. Limiting factor is reviews. And we talk a lot about that. And I'm sure you do it at the masterminds. It's an art. How can you motivate your team? How can you motivate your clients? How can you make sure, we literally just got a review 2 days ago to one of our Chicago criminal lawyers, where they were saying something along the lines of, we didn't like the tone of the person who answered the phone in a 1-star review. Tone of the person answering the phone. And that, to me, opens the door. If that's going to stick, then we need to be getting the people that love the tone when somebody answers the phone. I'm sorry, we can't help you. In my case, it's just property damage. Here's our 1-pager on how to deal with the insurance companies. We don't want to represent you because we don't want to take a percentage of the money you're going to get. We can't make you more than you. Here's what you do to do self-help. That alone should generate a review. We don't do this type of law, but we have a friend that does. Let me make an introduction. That nexus, that is by Google standards allowed to get you a review. So if we're going to get dinged with people on nonsense, let's get the reviews on that intersection. How many people do you speak to that PILMA's not right for, or it may not be right at this moment, but 15 minutes of Ken's time is pretty freaking valuable. Rather than a thank you, that's the social currency that I want lawyers to think about. And it's, again, we could do an entire podcast on this, probably should, on how do we get law firm owners to evangelize that this is the currency. My current thinking, and this is conservative, that every review that one of your tribe members gets is worth $1,000 annually to their bottom line. If they get 100 reviews, that's an extra $100,000. If they were to get 1,000 reviews, they will do $1 million more in revenue. It's that dramatic. And like, you could ignore it, or you could sort of get what you get. But if I told you, what is the time value of money for every review you get me 10 reviews next week, you will do another $10,000. And there's very few things that you could say in life that pull that. And this is not one time. This is the gift that keeps on giving.
Well, I'll agree with you, because I think the 3-pack, or whatever you want to call it now, that to me is like gold real estate.
Yeah.
You can be one of the 3 law firms on that maps, I think.
And it's not one or none. Yes, you're downtown St. Louis. You can't get it. That's a lot. There's a lot of territory in the greater St. Louis area. Find yourself your home and put a pin on the map there. And yeah, it may be less cases than another area, but if you own one of those areas, that to me, I mean, you have clients all at all different stages. You have guys who, are doing 20 cases a month. If you're able to get another 8 by opening a satellite office, that's gonna, it's a major increase in what you're doing per month. If you're a mega firm and you're trying to grow at X% per year, this is one of those areas where you have the ability to generate reviews, getting, going into an area that does have some competition and taking it on. We do a whole process at BluShark where we think about, it's like Moneyballing, if you like the book or movie, like, what is it going to take? Looking at the reviews in the area. If there's, if nobody has more than 75 reviews, and you can get 100 reviews for a new office, you're going to have, that with a well-established website and all of the local search going, you can move the needle. And it's, whereas if you go in, you're sitting in the middle of Tampa and there are 3 guys with over 1,000 reviews, that's going to be pretty challenging. You probably want to go somewhere else. And yeah, it's going to be less, I think, being real with yourself about what it's going to take, and do you have the gumption to do this? Look, you could write a book on this. You have guys that walk into your masterminds or do a consultation with you where you're like, this guy's got it. If I tell him that he needs 100 reviews by the end of 60 days, he won't sleep until that happens. And you have other guys that you give them a year and they can't get you 30 reviews. And if you don't have that ability, don't play this game. Because I sat there, I saw a bunch of guys that I love in Westchester, 3 able-bodied white male lawyers sat there with 17 reviews amongst 2 offices. And I'm like, guys, you're married, you have kids, you go to preschool, you go to elementary school. If just like this realtor, you think that realtor is sitting back waiting for stuff? Like, go seize the day. There's stuff that you need to outsource that, like, or don't need to, but outsourcing is a viable way. This is one of those things you can't outsource. And this doesn't mean going to a mastermind, because we saw this with the fluctuation a few months back. Remember when everybody lost their reviews around the beginning of the year and they bounced back? What I saw from that was 2 things. Google count is off. Yeah, of course, Google's going to figure out how to count. They're smart enough to do that. But what we saw when not the review count was off, but reviews disappeared and they did come back, was almost to a T, you could connect some nefarious act to those reviews. A friend of mine in Jersey, they lost, 50, 70 reviews. They had done a spike with $100 per review bonus. Spiked. Google didn't like that. Again, they came back for now, but like, they're basically saying, hey, we know what you did. Another guy, like Jay talked about it publicly, so I can say this. He was in a mastermind. Everybody with the same freaking Wi-Fi out of state reviewed at the same time everybody else. Google saw those 15 reviews. Yes, they're still up there. Great. But Google knows that that's there. What I'm saying is, be smart about it. Don't spike. Don't be on the same IP address. Don't do everything reciprocal, but be aggressive. If you're not, again, I think of this when you talk to like ethics lawyers, there's risk in getting out of bed has risk. So this isn't like you shouldn't do it, because you should be doing everything you can. Again, don't go one step too far, but push as hard as you can, understanding I didn't like the tone of the person answering the phone. Got us that nexus is reviewable. Let's take the positive of that How many people do you say, you know what, you do family law, you'd be much better off in this group? That's Ken turning down business in order to help somebody out. That is a reviewable moment. Again, there's a cringe factor. Does Ken really want to say, here it is? Not really, right? You want to be benevolent. You don't want to think that you're asking for something. But, that realtor that called you, she's got no fear, right? She's calling you like, that's pretty, you were on my website. That's ballsy. I mean, ballsy wins. When you look at a Morgan, he says something when you speak to him offline, which is like, you want to do lion stuff. Sometimes you gotta go, do lion stuff. You gotta kill something. Let's be tenacious. And you as the law, if this is, you can't delegate it. I did this once. I sent it to my intake team. Said, you guys are solely in charge of reviews. The moment you start to spike, they're like, we're too busy. We're making money. Now we look at reviews differently. We have intake asking for reviews on this intersection, on things we refer out. We've helped somebody. I have no problem. I don't think Google has a problem with that. If you make somebody better off after speaking with you, that is above board, white hat, go for it. This isn't like, going out and going to a street fair and handing people, $10 gift cards to Dunkin' Donuts and saying, please review me. This is somebody you had a meaningful impact on, and trying to pull that together. So to me, it's a strategy, looking at what worked. When you crowdsource at these meetings, where are they getting their cases from right now? And my guess is it's local search.
And local search, referrals, and LSAs.
Right.
And my last question of the day is, have you seen it? Local service ads are pretty dominant, and I see some firms do really good with it. And I see some firms just really bomb at it. I think it's got a lot to do with the way they handle the calls, but I don't want to go there now. What I want to go to, are you seeing people pulling money from PPC and pushing it in LSAs? Or
I can easily answer that part, which is, to me, unless you're in some magical market, every dollar goes to LSA until it's maxed out, assuming you're answering calls well, yada, yada, which you should be doing in PPC, and then move the money to, again, God bless, test it. But if you can spend money well on LSAs, it's not like PPC where they'll find a way to spend your money. It is generally limited. And again, I used to say, if you could spend $1 million, go spend it. I'll get a bank loan and front it for you. It's not quite as lucrative as it was. They've made some adjustments with the lack of challenges has made it much more challenging to get an ROI, but it means your intake needs to be dialed in. You need to be looking at this. If your intake is not dialed in, your ROI is much different. But to go back to your question, all money to LSAs until maxed out, then PPC.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was telling. We had a lawyer in our mastermind. I'm not giving away any names, but just say he was spending $100,000 a month on PPC, and his cost per case was pretty high. And I said, what are you doing on LSA? He said, not very much. And I said, well, why don't you at least apportion 70,000 over to that? I don't want you to give away your PPC.
Right. Sadly, it's not instantaneous, right? Google, it's a gift. Google has given us a better ROI. It's what can you spend? God forbid you can spend 10K, spend it. My gut is, this guy doesn't have great intake, and Google, which is giving you this gift, is saying, hey, if you don't answer the calls, we're knocking you out for 90 days. That's not secret, right? You don't answer the chats, we're knocking you out. So it may be that his intake was not strong enough, and that when he did it, he just didn't get any. But, look, it is imperative, I think, for any PI lawyer to at least test it as best they can. There may be markets where it doesn't work for you. It may be for whatever reason, but I want to spend as much money there as I can, because compared to referrals, especially if you're paying a third or more, the LSAs are a lot less when they work. And there are markets where PPC doesn't work anymore. The price is too high, and that's getting more and more. So the LSAs have, again, they got more expensive when they didn't allow the challenges, but that just means your team. Again, I have my own, look, I'm pretty sophisticated intake. I know a lot. I have to ride our intake to change with the times and be able to get off the phone quickly in order not to get charged. Whereas before they would say, oh, it's not, you say it wasn't a PI case. Okay. But if you're not off that phone within 30 seconds, you're going to get charged regardless of what happens next. But if you could sculpt those calls, easier said than done, you can bring your cost per case on the LSAs way down and make it a really beneficial thing. So yes, I would encourage that person, but I don't think he's going to be able to just snap his fingers and spend 70K. He's going to be lucky if he gets 10K in the first month. Lucky.
You have to build it up. They got to see that you want these cases, right?
If you don't respond, and if you're not the only guy, everybody wants them. So it's not like you raise your hand, you're like, yeah, you're not special, but if you do what they want, you can gain them, but it's not overnight.
Well, good deal, man. This has been great. This has been great. Any parting words? Anybody wants to get up with you? What's the best way to contact you?
I'm pretty easy to find on socials. Ken probably has my number somewhere. I thoroughly enjoy it and appreciate you and everything that your organization has done. I think it is, if you were at the last Super Summit, you would see that while other conferences are really faltering, there is more energy, more dynamism. I love the fact that you bring in outside speakers as well as your tribe members to be able to teach and grow, and that there is so much, not just that happens from stage, but the amount of stuff I personally got in the hallway. Hey, you have this repeater number. You should be using this TV agency because they do a great job with it. Those conversations to me is what makes that so special. And people, like if you, as a student of this space, see people that don't go anywhere else but pop up their heads and come to the Super Summit just because there is this X factor of sharing and learning, and that it happens there, and that the relationships formed at PILMA. I still have friends. I was at the second Super Summit ever back in the day. I still have friends from that first one that, dear friends that I travel with that are part of my world now that I wouldn't have but for what you built.
I appreciate that, son. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, keep doing a great job. Keep building that law firm and keep building up BluShark, and keep us in the knowledge of all this changing with the Google and the locals and all that stuff, because we need it. Absolutely.
Look forward to seeing you soon.
All right, buddy. Take care. Until next time, this is Ken Hardison, dedicated to your success. Thank you.
You have been listening to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, the podcast that leads lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Go to growyourlawfirm.com to find more ways to market and manage your law firm. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.